Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Surprise Jab Podcast. I'm your host, Zachary Ruger, surprising you with new topics every single week and jabbing you with your daily dose of UFC. And we've got plenty of UFC to talk about today. And even though there's not an event coming up this weekend, this rare occurrence where the UFC doesn't have an event on a Saturday, I still compiled a bunch of recent MMA UFC news that's gone down. We're going to be revisiting some past UFC years, looking at some lists and stuff. It's going to be a fun episode. Also, on today's episode, we will be dropping my NFL conference game predictions. There's two games going down Sunday, January 28th. So we'll be analyzing those, including finding some fun facts. We have a bunch of new coach hirings in the NFL. We'll talk about so much UFC news, as I have mentioned. We're going to be looking at the MMA top 50, 1 through 50 rankings for the upcoming year of 2024. Of course, ESPN always releases that. We're also going to be revisiting my time that I've been watching UFC, starting from 2019 and going up until now, actually. So for the next 3 episodes or so, we'll be revisiting past years. And for this episode, we'll be revisiting the year of 2019, where I first got into the UFC. So we'll kind of talk about when I first started watching up until now. That'll be fun. A bunch of new UFC 300 news, a new trailer for a movie Conor McGregor and Jake Gyllenhaal are in. We've got a bunch of stuff to talk about today. The weekend looms, everyone. It's going to be a pretty warm weekend here in Minnesota. I mean, 30s and 40s is actually pretty warm for us. I'm going to see the fam, going to see my girlfriend. We're going to make it a good time this upcoming weekend. But let's not waste any more time. Let's jump right into the episode. And kicking us off, we are going to look at the UFC rankings, because the UFC rankings have updated since UFC 297 went down, and we have some interesting changes that took place. We'll start down at women's bantamweight, where of course we have the new champion Raquel Pennington. Everyone else pretty much moved up a bit, and the new add into the division is Melissa Dixon. Don't really know too much about Melissa Dixon, now ranked number 15. She's 6-0. 3 wins by knockout, all 3 of those in the first round. Last beat Irina Alexieva, October 14th. So good for you, Melissa. You're now in the rankings. Raquel Pennington. It'll be interesting to see who she defends her belt against. Of course, Julia Pena is a favorite, but there is a women's bantamweight bout going down at UFC 300, which we will get to in just a second. In the women's flyweight rankings, Jasmine Jasudavicius is now ranked number 15 after her outstanding performance at UFC 297, where she outlanded Priscilla Cachoeira by 300 strikes, 326 to 26 strikes. Absolutely insane. At women's strawweight, Carla Esparza taken off the rankings, which is actually pretty hilarious because I said Carla Esparza would have the biggest fall off this year and on one of our past episodes, and she was taken out of the rankings. And moving on, at number 15 is Jillian Robertson, who had a dominating victory at UFC 297. Happy to see both of the Canadian women coming on the rankings at number 15. And with that, Yan Chaonin is now officially the number 1 contender in the division as she prepares for her UFC 300 title shot attempt at Zhang Weili. In the women's pound-for-pound rankings, Mayra Bueno Silva is now on at 15, which doesn't really make sense, being that she lost. Irene Aldana, Kelvin Vera, Amanda Lemos all bumping up a spot. Tatiana Suarez up to 9. Tatiana Suarez has passed Yan Chaonin in the women's pound-for-pound from 9 to 10, despite being below her in their actual divisional rankings. Very odd. Raquel Pennington moves up 5 spots. She's now the number 7 woman in the pound-for-pound rankings. And Erin Blanchfield passes Julia Pena from 5 to 4. So Erin Blanchfield is technically the number 4 woman in the world. How about that? The women's pound-for-pound rankings, just about as bad as the men's pound-for-pound rankings. At middleweight, Dricus du Plessis, of course, is your new champion, moving Sean Strickland to the number 1 spot. And Ichel Adesanya is now listed as the number 2 contender in the division. That is very wild to see. Chris Curtis passing Anthony Hernandez from 14 to 13. Anthony Hernandez actually has a fight coming up against Roman Kopilov. It'll be interesting to see how that goes down at UFC 298. At welterweight, Neil Magny passes Kevin Holland. Good stuff for Neil. And some people are bringing up that of a potential opponent that Neil could fight again, and that could be Ian Machado Gary. I don't see that going down, but yeah, Neil Magny, I say we give him someone like Vicente Luque, someone like that, someone fun. Actually, is Vicente Luque fighting Sean Brady? Maybe the loser of that At men's featherweight, Io Topura is now ranked number 3. Brian Ortega is ranked number 4. And Movsar Evloev moving up 4 spots to number 5. Arnold Allen now ranked 6 in the division. Movsar Evloev, I mean, he should probably fight the winner of Brian Ortega and Yair Rodriguez. If the winner or loser, the winner makes more sense if we're going to be talking about title shot opportunities, but you know what? I'm happy for the undefeated Russian. And our last update is in the men's pound-for-pound rankings as Duplessis, your new middleweight champion, debuts at number 8. Number 8 in the men's pound-for-pound rankings. Pantoja, your current flyweight champion, now at 9. Israel Adesanya at 10. And Sean Strickland dropping down 11 spots. Pretty fascinating. Sean Strickland is, you know what? I don't know what he's going to do next. He's got a lot of options, but being in the pound-for-pound rankings, it's certainly odd to see. You know, I get that all champions are ranked in the pound for pound, but it's just kind of odd to look at and see that, yeah, Sean Strickland is ranked in the men's pound for pound. I don't know. No, not that I want to knock off of him, but I mean, I don't know if I would personally put him in the men's pound for pound rankings. Before we get into the rest of our UFC news, we're actually going to look at some other things because we have a lot of UFC. And I got to break it up because our main event for this episode will be my conference game prediction. So, of course, on every episode, we go and we look at the 48 Laws of Power, a book I've been reading. I set the goal to finish this book by the end of January. I do not think that I'm going to get there, but we'll see what happens. But yeah, we read some new laws in the book, of course, so let's take a look at what new laws we have read in regards to the 48 Laws of Power, how to obtain power. We'll start off with Law 13, 14, 15, and 16. I think I've read 4 laws in the time since we last met, so let's get into it. So law number 13 states, when asking for help, appeal to people's self-interest, never to their mercy or gratitude. This is a very interesting statement because if you think, a lot of people don't really want to just outright help you. There always has to be an incentive for them, unless they're like a family member or a very close friend. But when you're asking someone you're somewhat close to, they aren't really going to do something personal to help you. So here's what it says. If you need to turn to an ally for help, do not bother to remind him of your past assistance and good deeds. He will find a way to ignore you. Instead, uncover something in your request or in your alliance with him that will benefit him and emphasize it out of all proportion. He will respond enthusiastically when he sees something to be gained for himself. I think this is a very good thing to live by. I mean, it's very hard to get someone to assist you with something when you know that they probably don't want to. And if you say, oh, well, guess what? I did this for you a while ago. Well, then they don't really want to do it. You're almost guilting them into assisting you. You should want them to do it. So imagine this, a cord that binds. The cord of mercy and gratitude is threadbare and will break at the first shock. Do not throw such a lifeline. The cord of mutual self-interest is woven of many fibers and cannot easily be severed. It will serve you well for years. The shortest and best way to make your fortune is to let people see clearly that it is in their interest to promote yours. I mean, think about the UFC, for example. I mean, you don't really want to push a guy that you don't want to support. All right, so it's easier to gain fame in a sport if you have people sort of rooting for you. In any case, I don't know if that really directly relates, but that's kind of my analogy to it, but that certainly was fascinating. Law 14, moving on, says, pose as a friend, work as a spy. Knowing about your rival is critical. Use spies to gather valuable information that will keep you a step ahead. Better still, play the spy yourself. In polite social encounters, learn to probe. Ask indirect questions to get people to reveal their weaknesses and intentions. There is no occasion that is not an opportunity for artful spying. I find this one fascinating. Personally, someone who, I don't really want to say I gossip, but I certainly can be gabby at times. I'm like the neighborhood moms going for their morning walk, talking about all the drama in the neighborhood. That's kind of me when I'm talking to people. But if I ever do have interest, I feel like I can always find someone that can find out information for me. I can be crafty like that. However, it does kind of feel malicious at times, trying to use someone else to find out information for yourself. But I mean, at the same time, this is all about obtaining power. So when I rule the world, I'll be using these laws. I'm obviously joking. This law, absolutely wild. I don't think I shared these ones because I'm trying to remember. This one was absolutely crazy. I don't think I shared this one. I feel like I did, but I don't think I did. Law number 15: crush your enemy totally. All great leaders since Moses have known that a feared enemy must be crushed completely. Sometimes they have learned this the hard way. If one ember is left alight, no matter how dimly it smolders, a fire will eventually break out. More is lost through stopping halfway than through total annihilation. The enemy will recover and seek revenge. Crush him, not only in body, but in spirit. I remember the one that I shared last time. It was like not associating with like sad people. This one's absolutely crazy. I mean, it tells the story of in Chinese history between two leaders, Hyun Sung Yu and Liu Peiyang, and they used to be childhood friends. They grew up together, but they eventually became enemies. And there were many a times that I believe it was who was it? His song was urged to kill Liu Peng, but always resisted, even when he had him, because it was an old friend. And eventually, after many times, he was after capturing him and keep letting him go. Eventually, he was captured, and it was decided that he was to be killed. But when they went to kill him, he managed to escape, and everyone was tailing on him. And what he did is he went to a member of some random army and said, "They want to kill me." Actually, let me read here. Making a false treaty, he lured Husang into relaxing his defense, then slaughtered almost all of his army. Xiang managed to escape, alone and on foot, knowing that Liu had put a bounty on his head. He came upon a small group of his own retreating soldiers and cried out, "I hear Liu Peng has offered 1,000 pieces of gold and a fief of 10,000 families for my head. Let me do you a favor." And he slit his own throat and died. That's pretty deep. That's pretty intense. But, think about this. A viper crushed beneath your foot, but left alive, will rear up and bite you with a double dose of venom. An enemy that is left around is like a half-dead viper that you nurse back to health. Time makes the venom grow stronger. I don't really have too many enemies that I need to crush, but if I ever engage with an enemy, I'll make sure to absolutely destroy them. Well, how about that? Wow, people are gonna think I'm a psychopath or something? I don't really know all the terminology, but I just like reading books. And the last law I read, I believe yesterday, use absence to increase respect and honor. I mean, this one's pretty straightforward, and this can really be applied to trying to get a girl, trying to get a guy. If you hang around someone too often, they may kind of get sick with you. You kind of got to play a little fish game. You kind of tug on the line a bit. You can't just, the fish isn't going to take the bite right away. So it kind of talks about like not always being around, not always being present, making sure that you kind of create some an atmosphere about yourself by stepping away for a bit. People are kind of like, wait, where is that person? Where is he? Where is she? I want them back. And that's how you kind of get people to want more of you. But, if you step away too long, you might not end up being pushed away. So it's all about the balance. It's all about the balance that you create by how you do stuff. This book's been very good. I very much encourage everyone to read it. I have like 30 more laws, though. I do not think I'm going to be getting through all those laws. But let's check out something we haven't looked at in a while, which is the NBA and NHL standings. I mean, it's been a minute. I feel like it's been a full week. I feel like it is definitely been a full week since we last checked in with all the leagues, seeing what was going on. But in the NBA, I saw the other night Karl Anthony Towns dropped 62 points. Joel Embiid dropped 70. I was seeing clips of Victor Wembanyama and Chet Holmgren battling it out. It has been a pretty crazy season in the NBA, and I've been watching pretty much just through Instagram clips and stuff. In the Eastern Conference, Celtics still the top team, 34-10, 21 at home. They did lose at home. They are 7-3 their last 10, though, on a 2-game win streak. Bucks, who I saw fired their head coach, actually hired Doc Rivers, I believe, signing him to like a big deal. They're second in the Eastern Conference, 31-13 on a 3-game win streak. They're 24 at home, which honestly isn't too bad. 76ers in third are on a 6-game winning streak, sitting at 29-13. Very good stuff there. Knicks in fifth are on a 4-game win streak. Heat in sixth, 4-game losing streak. And actually, this is absolutely wild. The Heat, Pacers, Magic, Bulls, Hawks, Nets, Raptors, Hornets, and Wizards, so the 6 to 14 ranked teams are all on a losing streak. That is absolutely wild to me. Wizards are on a 5-game losing streak, 14th in the East, and the Pistons actually got a win the other night. They're 2-8 their last 10, 5-39 on the year. They might not end up being the worst team in history, despite setting the record for most straight losses. How about that? Any early predictions I could give? There really isn't any. I don't really have any. Celtics definitely the favorite. Lillard and Giannis got to be the favorite with the Bucks. Sleeper team, maybe. I don't really have a sleeper team. Maybe the Cavs. Cavs are sitting at 4 seed. In the West, oh my goodness, what's happened, guys? Guys, something's happened. The Thunder are now the number 1 team in the Western Conference. They and the Timberwolves are both 31-13, so they're tied. But I think Thunder own a tiebreaker over the Timberwolves. So Timberwolves are the number 2 seed in the West. Thunder are on a 4-game win streak. Timberwolves coming off a win the other night. Nuggets in third, 31-14. They're on a 3-game win streak. Clippers on a 3-game win streak, 28-14. And the Suns, 26-18. 7-game win streak. Very impressive stuff there. Pelicans are up to 6. Kings at 7. Mavericks on a 3-game losing streak have fallen down to the number 8 spot. Lakers, 22-23 record. LeBron, what's going on there? Spurs, still the worst team, 8-36, 3-7 in their last 10. Trailblazers, 13-31 at 14. The Warriors are the number 12 team in the West, 19-22 record. Wow. I actually have a negative home record, 11-17. Ooh, nasty. Wait, that's our conference record. At home, the Warriors are 12-11. Still not that good. NBA continues to roll on this season, but my oh my, I mean, just a lot of crazy stuff going on. Why are the Timberwolves not the number 1 team? Why is that the case? I don't know. Someone needs to explain it to me in Fortnite terms. Checking briefly on the NHL land. Bruins are 29-9-9, have 67 points. They're the number 1 team in the Eastern Conference. Number 2 team is the Panthers with 62 points. They have a 29-14-4 record. Very nice there. Only other team with 60 points is the Rangers with 61. They're atop their division, 29-15-3 record. They've only lost in overtime 3 times. Nothing really else to point out here. I mean, Senators are 18-24-1, and Blue Jackets are 14-23-9, both with 37 points. So really, the Eastern Conference isn't too bad. No one's really on too much of a win streak or a losing streak. I don't really have much to say. I do know that I need to bring on Cole and Jaden. I was hoping to get them on this week. We all were busy. So hopefully next week they can come on and we can get some more perspectives on the NHL world. Best team in the league, though, in the Western Conference is the 32-11-5 with 69 points. The Canucks, 58-point differential, 2 plus 58. They're 8-0-2, their last 10. They've been doing good. Oilers, 10-0, their last 10. They're on a 14-game win streak. Wow, 27-15-1. They got 55 points. Golden Knights, 62 points. They got 28-14-6 record. They're doing pretty good. Avalanche and Jets both have 65 points. 30-11-5 record for the Jets. Avalanche are 31-14-3. Blackhawks, are they the worst team in the league? Are the Blackhawks the worst team? They're tied with the Sharks, both with 30 points. But Sharks have one less loss. Or one less win than them. Sharks are 13-31-4, minus 90 point differential. Blackhawks are 14-32-3. 14-32-3, yes. 14 wins, 32 losses, 2 overtime losses, minus 68 point differential. Yikes. The Wild, the only team I care about, are 21-21-5. 5 overtime losses, 21 wins, 21 normal time losses, however you want to phrase it. They're on a 3-game win streak, though. How about that? Still have a minus 15 point differential. Wow. Yikes. Yeah, I haven't been paying too much attention to the leagues since we started doing this every just once a week, not every episode. We check on the rankings, so it's always fascinating to see what's been going on in the world of NHL and NBA. But let's go over all of our UFC information. I've accumulated a lot. This is going to be pretty hectic. I mean, usually I acquire a couple facts, but we have got so many. Let's talk about them all, and then we'll end it out actually with talking about, or not the whole episode, but just this little segment with going over what fights could also be added to UFC 300. So, for starters, we got a little chill one here, as Germaine de Randamie will be returning to the women's bantamweight division to take on Norma Dumont on April 6th. Germaine de Randamie used to be in the top 10 or top 3, actually. She was 1 or 2 in the women's bantamweight division. Actually picked up a win over Julia Pena last time out before going on a hiatus. She'll make a 2-year return against the number, what's Norma up to now? Norma Dumont is currently ranked 11th in the division. Happy to see Germaine returning. Norma's on a little 2-fight win streak, I believe, is she? Maybe she's on more. Maybe Norma's on a little 3-fight win streak for Norma Dumont. How about that? Only loss is a split decision to Macy Chiasson, who's actually ranked above her. So yeah, a little 5-1 record in the UFC. That's not too shabby, Norma. But Germaine de Randamie was hoping that she would make it on the Paris card, but sadly she did not the past 2 years. She actually fought, we'll probably bring this up later, she fought Amanda Nunes at UFC 245 in December of 2019. I actually watched that live, and it wasn't the most exciting fight. But Germaine de Randamie, happy to have you back. Norma Dumont, actually, I think I predicted her to have the biggest rise in the division. So if she gets a win over Germaine de Randamie, that would be pretty big. The UFC Saudi Arabia card has a date for its fight night, and it is on June 22nd. There, of course, will not be a title fight on the card. It is rumored about who will main event it. No one really knows yet, but it is pretty interesting to see the UFC just kind of keeping it low-key compared to the PFL, compared to Bellator, compared to boxing, where they try and put on huge spectacles. In Saudi Arabia, Dana White's treating it very, very chill. A huge fight added to UFC 300. This was not anyone's bingo card, I guarantee, as Kayla Harrison will be joining the UFC to take on Holly Holm. This is a massive, massive fight. This will be Holly Holm's first fight since July of last year when she lost to Mayra Bueno Silva. And this will be Kayla Harrison's first fight in the UFC. She, of course, is 16-1, former, I believe, wrestler it was, or is she a boxer? I don't know what she was, kickboxer, Muay Thai, whatever. She's an excellent mixed martial artist, former PFL champion, dominated their lightweight division, dominated their featherweight division. And man, it'll be interesting to see that fight go down. Definitely going to be on the prelims of UFC 300. And she was rumored to be taking on Chris Cyborg in a bout for the PFL on Bellator. That did not go down. She instead chose the UFC route. I'll be happy to have her, man. I'm happy to have you. That is absolutely crazy. That's absolutely crazy. I was not thinking she would be on this card, and you know what? Having her on here, I'm happy to see it. Moving along to another UFC 300 announcement as we get some ranked featherweight action going down. Number 12 ranked Sodiq Yusuff will take on the hottest prospect right now in the UFC, Diego Lopez. Of course, Diego Lopez debuted last year in May against Movsar Evloev, who we just watched at UFC 297, by the way, and took him through a war. First fight in the UFC against a top 10 guy, now the number 5 guy. Took him to a fight of the night decision, threw up some tough submissions on him, and then came back in August of last year and submitted Gavin Tucker with a triangle armbar in just about a minute and a half. Comes back later in November at UFC 295 and knocks out Pat Sabatini in a minute and a half. 3 fights in the UFC. He's made $150K in performance bonuses. Diego Lopez is a must-see athlete. I mean, he's legit. He's legit as they come, and he kind of just come out of nowhere, if I'm being honest. He was kind of, I don't really want to say irrelevant. He wasn't relevant, but I mean, he joins on short notice, puts on a banger of a fight against Movsar, comes back his next 2, gets quick finishes, and the UFC is rewarding him. Huge fan favorite too. So excited to see Diego Lopez. His opponent, Sodiq Yusuff, is coming off one of my favorite fights of the year against Edson Barbosa. It was a fight of the night. Sodiq, I mean, incredible record. He's 13-3. In the UFC, I believe he is 6-2. Losses are to Edson Barbosa and Arnold Allen by decision. Guy is absolutely talented. Happy to see both of those guys come back. And I like both of them, so it kind of sucks. It really does kind of suck that I'm going to have to watch one of them lose. But that's the price I pay. That's the price I pay for being a fan of many, many UFC fighters. But happy to just have back those fighters. Some unfortunate news. The March 30th Atlantic City bout between Carlos Ulberg and Dominic Reyes, two top 15 light heavyweights. Dominic is 14. Carlos was unranked, but is on an absolute tear. That fight's off. Dominic Reyes is injured, so stepping in to fight Carlos Ulberg will actually be ranked number 12, so actually 2 spots higher than Dominic Reyes, Alonzo Menafield. How about that? I'm trying to find the stats for Carlos Ulberg. I mean, dude's absolutely crazy. Here he is. Carlos Ulberg, 10-1 record. He's on a 5-fight win streak. Last 4 fights he's finished. Dude is absolutely so crazy. Fights out of the same camp he's Volkanovski out of Sanya, from City Kickboxing or whatever. Dude's wild. Dude is a wild fighter. Love watching him fight. And I was hoping he'd knock out Dominic Reyes. That will not be the case instead. He'll be taking on Alonzo Menafield, who's on a 5-fight unbeaten streak, 2-fight win streak, coming off a huge fight against Dustin Jacoby at UFC 296. Alonzo, thank you so much for stepping in on short notice. I appreciate it very, very much. Alonzo Menafield actually holds, 7 first-round finishes in the UFC. 2 of those were actually on the Contender Series. He's on the Contender Series twice. Got wins in both of those fights. Happy to see him coming back. And women's strawweight, I believe women's flyweight, I don't know what division it's in. I believe it's women's flyweight. Joanne Wood is back to take on Marina Moroz of actually Ukraine descent. I'll be happy to see her fight. Joanne Wood from Scotland, I think it is. Is Joanne Wood from Scotland? I don't know. Just an interesting fight going down on UFC 299 on the prelims. We're always happy to look at some prelim fights that are going down. UFC 300 is currently at 10 of 14 confirmed fights for the card. I say 14 because that is usually how many fights they max out on a UFC card. And I've been kind of speculating about what's going to be going down with that card. So actually, no, one more fight I wanted to touch on was Drakkar Klose and Joaquim Silva, which was announced for UFC 301, which is in Rio de Janeiro on May 4th. 2 great unranked lightweights. Joaquim Silva, of course, lost to Arman Tsarukyan last year. Clipped him pretty good, though. Then beat Clay Guida. Drakkar Klose did have a good debut. He finished someone, didn't he? Drakkar Klose finished somebody, and I cannot recall who it was, but Drakkar Klose, you are a very talented fighter. Actually, let me see, because Drakkar Klose, of course, most known for his dramatic loss to Beneil Dariush at what was it? So I guess, okay, when I type in Drakkar Klose into the UFC stats, nothing comes up. So we're literally just going to leave that as is. But Drakkar Klose got knocked out by Beneil Dariush in February of 2020. And it was kind of a meme. His mouth guard came out. The judges, who was it? DC, Anik, Rogan. They all had just a crazy reaction to it. And it was super funny. But since then, Drakkar's come back, gotten some big wins in the UFC. We'll be happy to see him return against Joaquim Silva. But UFC 300, it's been the big talk of the town, and we can only speculate about what is left for this card. Current card right now, you got Zhang Wei Li versus Yan Chaonin for the women's strawweight belt. That will be obviously on the main card. Justin Gaethje versus Max Holloway for the BMF belt, obviously on the main card. Charles Oliveira versus Arman Tsarukyan. I'm projecting that to be on the main card. Jiri Prochazka versus Alexander Rakic. I'm predicting that to be on the prelims. Calvin Kattar and Aljamain Sterling, definitely on the prelims. Holly Holm versus Kayla Harrison, definitely on the prelims. Davison Figueiredo and Cody Garbrandt, either going to be on the early prelims or regular prelims. Sodiq Yusuff, Diego Lopez, definitely early prelims. Bobby Green, Jim Miller, early prelims. And Bo Nickel versus Cody Brundage, I predict will open up the card when that goes down in April. A lot of speculations about what could be going down. I mean, Alex Pereira is definitely a champion available to main event this card, but the rumors is that he's probably fighting Jamal Hill or he's fighting Magman Ankalaev at UFC 301, as there really isn't another Brazilian who can main event that card. So we're actually probably going to Alex Pereira as the main event, even though that could be a potential option. The rumored is that Leon Edwards, your current welterweight champion, will be taking on number 2 contender Bilal Muhammad, probably in the co-main event. So that would probably fill up. We'll actually write this all down as we're doing this. Leon Edwards as versus Bilal as the co-main. It's just that is a hot rumor right now. Many pages have announced it. I think we're just kind of waiting for the announcement. Now, I will say, if Leon Edwards faced Shavkat Rakhmonov, 18-0, ranked number 3 Kazakhstan man, 18-0 with all finishes, by the way, I think that could actually main event the card. I think people are sleeping on that fight. But if we're going to do Leon Edwards versus Bilal, perfect time to do it as a co-main event. I heard that Tom Aspinall was offered the main event to defend his interim heavyweight belt against Stipe Miocic, and Stipe turned that fight down. I'm not going to say shocking. Because guess what? That does not surprise me. It does not surprise me. Stipe's been saying for a while, like, hey, I only want to fight John Jones. I'm only going to fight John Jones, which sucks because Tom Aspinall is trying to build a repertoire, trying to be the greatest heavyweight of all time, and no one will take fights with him. So that's very unfortunate for Tom. Tom also said that, he's ready to defend this belt this summer. The UFC is rumored to be going to Manchester, England, a UFC Manchester card in the summer. Could be headlined by Tom Aspinall versus Cyril Gane, or maybe the winner of Hulk Almeida and Curtis Blades. A lot of options about what Tom Aspinall could do. But if he's not main eventing UFC 300, then we'll see him this summer. Same with Alex Pereira. We'll see him in May if he doesn't main event. Hamza Chimaev, a name that's being thrown around for UFC 300. He's posted cryptic posts about fighting on UFC 300. Currently ranked number 9. Some hot rumors going around is he could fight Jared Cannonier on this card as like a main card bout. He could fight Israel Adesanya on this card. Or even, they're saying, Dricus du Plessis' coach, his camp, is saying, hey, we want to main event UFC 300. We're just trying to get him healthy. And Dricus was pretty banged up after his fight. You don't really recover too quickly from all that damage you took. So we'll see if he's medically cleared. The UFC could easily work their magic. But you could easily be seeing Dricus du Plessis versus Israel Adesanya or Hamzat Chimaev. So I'd say the favorite main event as of today, January 25th, is Adesanya versus du Plessis as the main event of UFC 300. That's got to be the favorite co-main event, Leon Edwards. And you have 3 title fights then. If you do that with a mock title, the BMF title, you get Charles Oliveira on the main card. So it's looking absolutely loaded. Hamzat, if you get him on the card, he's going to be on the main card over Charles Oliveira and Arman Tsarukyan. So you have to kind of assess what you're going to do about who's getting bumped from the main card, who's going to stay on there. But I kind of hope we do see Hamzat on here. Jared Cannonier would actually be a great opponent because Hamzat's ranked 9, Jared's ranked 4. It would work out pretty good, in my opinion. But then if that's the case, you had those 2 title fights, then you have 2 more prelims to add. Because, that'd be 12 fights. So that could be a full card. But I'm thinking they're going to load up with 14. So who are some big names that need fights? And when I look around all the divisions, it's kind of hard to pick out. Because obviously some people can make turnarounds quicker than others. I think about when Kamaru Usman turned around from February to April to main event UFC 261. That was pretty crazy. That was a wild, fast turnaround. But not everyone's like Kamaru Usman. So, when I kind of peek around, number 4, Corey Sandhagen in the men's bantamweight division doesn't have a fight, but at the same time, there's not really options for him, so that kind of brings some trouble. Movsar Evloev, obviously, he could be looking for a fight, but there really isn't anyone for him to take on, so no one really in the lighter divisions that's jumping out to me. Obviously, you could get some fan names like Tony Ferguson, see Kevin Holland and just fighting MVP. Colby Covington, I don't know if he's going to turn around, but if you could get Colby Covington versus anyone, peeking around at names, there really isn't any names for him to fight, but just anyone. Ian Gary, but there's just the turnarounds is what really draws into a question about what fights you could put on. So, not too many names when I peek around. Heavyweight, there are some names. Sergey Pavlovich, Cyril Gane. They don't have fights right now. You could do it. Alexander Volkov, Derek Lewis. A lot of these guys don't have fights right now. But we'll continue to see what happens as the time slowly ticks away for UFC 300. The last note that I missed in my notes is that Johan Lanese was released. That was the guy who got knocked out or got submitted by Sam Patterson on the prelims at UFC 297, who had lost 3 straight fights. And I said, hey, he's probably getting cut. He's probably getting cut. There really isn't a desire to have him on the card anymore. And lo and behold, he was cut. So there's that. To give my quick UFC 300 predictions for the 10 confirmed fights and my 2 other hypothetical fights. I mean, Bo Nickal, Cody Brundage, you're going to hear the exact same thing. Bo Nickal should run through Cody Brundage. Shouldn't even be a competition. Expect a Bo Nickal massacre. Bobby Green, Jim Miller, going to be a banger. I got right with Jim Miller. He's won on UFC 100. He's won on UFC 200. Bobby Green just got brutally knocked out by Jalen Turner. Give me Jim Miller. So did Yusuf and Diego Lopez. I like both guys, but Diego Lopez has been on fire. I'm riding his train to the top until it stops. So we're going with Diego Lopez in that. Deiveson Figueiredo and Cody Garbrandt. Look, if Deiveson Figueiredo doesn't brutally knock out Cody Garbrandt, I'll be disappointed. I expect something fun out of Deiveson Figueiredo. Holly Holm and Kayla Harrison. Look, I saw Kayla Harrison lose to Larissa Pacheco last time out that I watched one of her fights. But Holly Holm, I think, is towards the end of her run. I'm going with Kayla Harrison in her debut. Calvin Kattar, Aljamain Sterling, that's an interesting one. That is a very interesting fight. You see, Calvin Kattar, excellent boxing. That's kind of Aljamain's weakness. And Aljamain, excellent grappler. I'd say that would be Calvin Kattar's weakness, but I'm probably going with Calvin Kattar just because of that. I see him sleeping Aljamain Sterling, especially if Sean O'Malley is, then give me Calvin Kattar in that one. Jiri Prochazka and Alexander Rakic. This one has me very torn. Both have knockout power, but Rakic hasn't fought in a long time. We'll see how his layoff has been. I don't think he's fought since May of 2022. It's been quite some time, maybe even later in the year of 2022. But I'm a Jiri Prochazka fan. I've ridden with him in all of his fights. I'm going to have to go with Jiri Prochazka. Charles Oliveira, Arman Tsukrian. I might just pick this fight to be a draw. I like both these guys too much. But, I am going to pick with my heart for this one because I just root for Charles Oliveira every time. So it could be I pick Charles and he loses, and then I'd be double sad, or I pick Arman and, Charles wins, and I'd be only half sad. So we'll weigh the options, but I'm going with Charles Oliveira. And then I'll have to actually justify, because then I'll have to actually figure out, hey, who do I actually think will win? Justin Gaethje, Max Holloway, another close fight. All I've seen from Justin Gaethje his last few years, is the power he holds. And don't get me wrong, Max Holloway has power, but he's a volume guy. Okay, I'm thinking that Justin Gaethje could be the first guy to knock out Max Holloway. We'll see. Zhang Weili, Yan Chaonan, give me Zhang Weili. That's my girl. I'm predicting her to be the number one female fighter in the world come the end of the year. I mean, just give it to me all day. If Leon Edwards and Bilal Muhammad happens, Leon Edwards all day. Going to be a boring technical fight, but I'm never picking Bilal Muhammad. And there's a lot of Sanya and Jessica Duplessis. I'm very torn on this because, fun fact, the middleweight belt has actually swapped hands 5 straight times. Another fun fact is that Israel Adesanya has never lost a chance at beating the middleweight belt. I mean, he won it against Whitaker, and he won it against Pereira. So, I mean, a third time against Dricus Duplessis would be insane. But you know what? I'm kind of a Duplessis fan. I like being different from the crowd. I might pick Duplessis to win against Adesanya. We'll see, though. Hey, who knows if that fight will go down? Who knows if maybe it's Hamza versus Duplessis? But also if Hamza fights, I'm riding with Hamza. Just because, as much as people criticize him, he still is talented. I get the Usman fight kind of got some slack from the Gilbert Burns fight too. But he's still learning. He is still learning. So let's not knock him off too much. Hamza Chimaev, we'll see if we see you on UFC 300. I predict we do. Alrighty, what should we analyze next? Because I got a couple UFC related things I want to look at, a couple NFL things. Actually, let's talk about the some NFL coaches that were actually made, or some new NFL coaches, if you will, and then we'll look at all the finalists for the awards for the year. So yeah, NFL coaches and NFL awards. Let's check that out. So the big one. Jim Harbaugh, right? Is it Jim? It's Jim Harbaugh, right? He was the Michigan guy. He was at Michigan. He's actually been signed to the Chargers. The Chargers are taking the Michigan head coach. They're taking old Jimbo. I mean, I'm pumped for this. I'm absolutely pumped for this. Let me tell you that. I mean, here's a guy who was Harbaugh coaching in the NFL before. I I honestly cannot remember for the life of me. It wasn't the Niners. Was it? Harbaugh, Michigan? What's his name? It's Jim, right? It's Jim Harbaugh. Yes, he previously served as the head coach of Michigan, now joining the Los Angeles Chargers, which the Chargers are desperately in need of a good coach. Staley was absolutely terrible. Atlanta, there's no, he was interviewing with Atlanta. Yes, he was very, Atlanta, I'm interested to see what they do, because I'm hearing word that Bill Belichick might go there, and I just do not see that working out well. Jim Harbaugh was in the NFL. So let's just type in Jim Harbaugh NFL. By the way, we're on Bing, because my computer automatically loads up Bing, which I kind of hate. Top stories. Okay, I legit do not think I can find this. Jim Harbaugh NFL stats. Does Jim Harbaugh have NFL stats? The Colts. He was not the head coach of the Colts. What is it? Let's go to Wikipedia. My goodness, this is what happens when I try and do some live stats here on the pod. It just never works out. There he was. He was the 49ers coach from 2011 to 2014. That's all I needed. He's been at Michigan for 8 years. He joined in 2015. Wow. So an 8-year return to the league for Harbaugh. We'll see how it works out for him. But man, if he can take this team the way he took the Chargers team to the playoffs, or not the opposite, the way he took Michigan to the top of the podium, I mean, I am all here. I am all here for it. Jim Harbaugh, I wish you luck with this Chargers team. Panthers are actually hiring the Bucs offensive coordinator Dave Canales as its new head coach. Panthers really, really in need of some assistance, you could say, with the disaster that was their 2-15 season. Yes, Bryce Young. So hopefully this offensive coordinator can help out. And looking what he did for Baker Mayfield, looking what he did with Rachaad White. I mean, this Buccaneers offense led their team to a divisional round appearance. That's absolutely incredible. This team was supposed to be tanking with the loss of Tom Brady. Instead, it came out as a powerhouse, an absolute powerhouse. I think Dave Canales will do a great job in Carolina. In Carolina, my goal for you is to win 7 games next year. 7 games. That's my goal for Bryce Young. Final big head coach signing I saw was that the Falcons are hiring the Rams defensive coordinator Raheem Morris, not Mostert, Morris, Raheem Morris, as their new head coach. Very good. The past one, what was his name? Arthur Smith, maybe? Whatever. Terrible job. Just could not figure out what to do with this Falcons team. And the Rams defense, they're pretty solid. Taking over a whole team. Raheem, I think I like what I'm going to see. Falcons, Panthers, and Chargers. There are going to be some teams that probably the next 10 years you'll see a change of the guard for them. But as for now, they're bottom to maybe middle of the pack. I honestly don't even know if they're considered middle of the pack teams. But interesting head coach signings. The big thing that I wanted to talk about on today's episode was that the Associated Press unveiled their finalists for the NFL MVP and Offensive Player of the Year awards. Lamar Jackson, Chris McCaffrey, and Dak Prescott are the finalists, according to the Associated Press. And the winners will be announced February 8th. Josh Allen, Brock Purdy, and even Actually, no. Josh Allen and Brock Purdy are in the running for. I'm just going to the NFL's website. Sometimes ESPN is helpful. Other times ESPN is just absolutely a joke. At the same time, it's a corporation. Gotta be careful of that. Here's all the awards: Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, Christian McCaffrey, Dak Prescott, Brock Purdy, all in the running for MVP finalists. Get Brock Purdy out of there. Get Dak Prescott. Josh Allen, he led the league in, I think, touchdowns and total yards. I'm sorry, he did not do enough. It's between Lamar and McCaffrey. And as good as McCaffrey was, almost got 1,500 rushing yards on the season. I know he got over 2,000 purpose yards. What Lamar did this year was amazing. Give it to him. Lamar Jackson is my MVP. Chris McCaffrey, though, okay? Keep doing your thing, and you will become an MVP. Very, very pumped for that. Offensive Player of the Year finalists: Tyreek Hill, Lamar Jackson, CeeDee Lamb, Chris McCaffrey, Dak Prescott. Lamar, if you're winning MVP, just don't give it to him. CeeDee and Dak, you guys did really good, and CeeDee actually passed Tyreek for fantasy points. Yards went to Tyreek, though, But Christian McCaffrey, if he's not winning MVP, give him Offensive Player of the Year. If you snub him from both of those awards, then there's some discrepancy going on. Defensive Player of the Year, your final five are Deron Bland, cornerback for the Cowboys, Max Crosby, Myles Garrett, Micah Parsons, and T.J. Watt. All very deserving. Deron Bland set the record for most pick sixes. But other than that, got torched by a lot of backfields. Max Crosby, Myles Garrett, T.J. Watt, all kind of give me the same vibe, just these tough dudes in the trenches. But from what I've been seeing, Myles Garrett had an amazing year. So Myles Garrett is probably the favorite for Defensive Player of the Year. Offensive Rookie of the Year. This one's pretty interesting. Jahmyr Gibbs, Sam Laporta, Puka Nacua, Bijan Robinson, and C.J. Stroud are your top five finalists. Out of those five, I'd probably say Sam Laporta, Puka, and CJ are my top three. Jahmyr, Bijan, amazing seasons, but, the other guys accomplish more. They're not going to give it to Sam Laporta, unfortunately. So it comes down to Puka and CJ, and this is where it gets tough, because CJ led his team to a appearance in the divisional round against the Ravens. He did amazing, but Puka Nacua set the all-time receiving yards for the NFL history, so I got to give it to Puka Nacua. If they could do a co-award, I would very much encourage that. I would love to see a co-award for all these guys. Actually, there's four more categories. Defensive Rookie of the Year, you got Will Anderson Jr. of the Texans, Jalen Carter of the Eagles, Joey Porter Jr. of the Steelers, Kobe Turner of the Rams, and Devin Witherspoon of the Seahawks. Honestly, it could go any which way. Will Anderson Jr., Devin Witherspoon, probably my top two guys, but honestly, I don't really pay too much to defensive rookies. Comeback Player of the Year, Joe Flacco, DeMar Hamlin, Baker Mayfield, Matthew Stafford, Tua Tagovailoa. Amazing stuff from Baker, Matthew, and Tua, but the debate comes down to Joe Flacco or DeMar Hamlin. If they give it to DeMar, it's a huge mistake, because DeMar Hamlin, he almost died last year. Yeah, he played this year, but he's not a good NFL player. He's not. He doesn't even start. I don't even know if he clocked 15 minutes of field time the whole year. Joe Flacco led the Browns team to the number 5 seed, led them into the playoffs. Give me Joe Flacco, Comeback Player of the Year. Amazing stuff. Just truly amazing stuff. Coach of the Year finalists. This one's going to be interesting. You got Dan Campbell, John Harbaugh, D'Amico Ryan, Kyle Shanahan, Kevin Stefanski. All right, let's do some elimination. Kyle Shanahan and John Harbaugh, you both are amazing, but we already knew your teams were good. You add an aspect to them, but I just don't think so. Kevin Stefanski, I would have said if your team didn't get blown out by the Texans, you would have made it, but you're just not up here. You're just up here because they need a fifth guy. It comes down to D'Amico Ryan or Dan Campbell, and it's so tricky because D'Amico Ryan took this Texans team, which was sinking, and led it to a divisional round appearance. They even won their first playoff game, won the division. Meanwhile, Dan Campbell has taken this Lions team from 0-16, almost 1-16 or whatever, and he has managed to bring them to the NFC Conference Championship, and they don't even have terrible odds of beating the 49ers. They have a pretty good chance to beat the 49ers. I might even pick the Lions. We'll see later on the episode, but man, I don't know. I'm going with Dan Campbell. I just think taking this Lions team from where it was the last 2 years, bringing it here. The draft picks of Jahmyr Gibbs, Sam Laporta have worked out so good. Jared Goff is having a career resurgence in Detroit. Dan Campbell, I'm going to give it to you. And lastly, we have Assistant Coach of the Year awards. Bobby Slowick, Offensive Coordinator for the Texans. Jim Schwartz, Defensive Coordinator for the Browns. Todd Monken, Offensive Coordinator, Ravens. Mike McDonald, Defensive Coordinator, Ravens. And Ben Johnson, Offensive Coordinator, Lions. All these guys very deserving. Going to get rid of... actually, I'm not going to get rid of any of these. All these guys are deserving. Think about the Lions offense, how good it's been this year. The Ravens offense and defense both are just immaculate. Browns defense is what carried them as far as they did. And this Texans offense is going to be a problem the next few years. Nico Collins, Tank Dell. If they keep Devin Singletary, he's going to be a killer. And we'll see what happens with Dameon Pierce and CJ Stroud, man. This team is in good hands. I'll see if I'm making a pick. I'll just give it to one of the Ravens guys. I don't know. I honestly don't know. Any other fun stats for the NFL? I don't really think so. I just wanted to kind of cover the odds. There's a pretty hectic season, and there's a lot of awards on the line. I'll say, if DeMar Hamlin wins, I will be upset. That's the only thing that I'll be upset at, because I just know how BS it is that Damar should not. Damar should not be your comeback player of the year. He did not do anything. He didn't do anything. Did he even get a tackle? Did Damar Hamlin even get a tackle this season? I don't think so. I don't think Damar Hamlin did anything. We won't talk too much down on Damar, though. We got some more stuff to talk about. So, moving into our next segment. Ooh, we are just cruising along at lightning speed. The MMA rank, 50-1. Of course, I was going to talk about this earlier, decided not to. But we're going to go through. We're going to go through from 50-1 and look at who's supposed to be, the best, who's supposed to be the worst, and we'll see what happens. But this is out of all MMA people, through all organizations. So yeah, pretty cool. Let's get into it. So your number 50 MMA fighter for 2024 is actually Kayla Harrison. And they dropped this before it was announced she was going to the UFC. She actually fought in the PFL women's lightweight division, 155. I mean, she's going to have to cut 20 pounds. 20 pounds. It's pretty hectic. Like I mentioned, 16-1 record. She ended her year with a win over Aspen Ladd in the PFL. She is super good. We'll see what she does against Holly Holm. At 49, Chris Cyborg. Currently your Bellator Women's Featherweight Champion, a 27-2 MMA record. And, Chris Cyborg, legend of the game, legendary woman. We'll see what she does, but she's probably got big fights lined up in the PFL and Bellator. Who knows? 48, they got Conor McGregor. How about that? He wasn't on their list last year. 22-6 record. He's never. No one else has had more spotlight than Conor McGregor. We'll see if he returns this year. I really hope he does against Michael Chandler, against Max Holloway, against Nate Diaz. I hope we see Conor McGregor. Actually, speaking of McGregor, I watched the trailer for his Roadhouse movie, and it actually looks good. Him and Jake Gyllenhaal, Jake's the good guy, Jake's the Roadhouse, the fighter, the bouncer, and Conor McGregor's like this enforcer villain. I mean, I'm going to watch it. It's kind of a shame it's not in the theaters. It's going to be on Amazon Prime, so at least I can watch it in the comfort of my home, but I really feel like this should be on some movie theater, because I pay some money. They can make some money off of me. At 47, they got Jalen Turner, currently in the lightweight top 15. Wasn't even ranked on the top 50 last year. 14-7 MMA record. 2023 was a pretty crazy year for Jalen Turner. He lost 2 of his 3 fights, but 2 of those were split decisions. And he ended the year with a big knockout of Bobby Green. I mean, he's going to be coming into the new year with momentum. What actually is Jalen ranked currently right now? He's currently ranked number 9. I could see him fighting number 7, Beneil Dariush. Gosh, he could even. The sky's the limit for Jalen Turner. I like this. At 45, Jamal Hill, of course, coming back from injury. Your former light heavyweight champion. 12-1 record. Only losses to Paul Craig. He's kind of like Magomedov Ankalaev. One win last year over Glover Teixeira. Pretty good. He might be in Brazil to take on Alex Pereira. We'll see. At number 44, we have A.J. McKee, who was actually ranked 22nd last year. He has a 21-1 professional record, fights in the lightweight division of Bellator. How did he do last year? He has to do with the fighters above him earning title opportunities and having a spotlight, since he didn't have any. He dropped his title back in April 2022. He is 3-0 in a heavier weight class. He'll be navigating the new PFL and Bellator arrangement that the ranking should improve in no time. AJ McKee, I saw him beat Patricio Pitbull. Then I saw Patricio Pitbull beat him in Bellator. You know what? Come to the UFC. We'll see what you're made of. At number 43, we got number 2 ranked men's UFC featherweight, Yair Rodriguez, who was ranked 27th last year, dropping down to 43, a 16-4 professional record. I mean, he submitted Josh Emmett, got destroyed by Volkanovski, and now has a fight with Brian Ortega. I'll have to say, this guy does not have much stock with him. I don't know what to do with Yair, but 43 is good for you. Wow, this has got to be the biggest fall-off. There will not be a bigger fall-off than this. 42 is Kamaru Usman, who last year in the top 50 was ranked 5 heading into 2023. He's fallen to 42. He's 20-4. What do you have, an 0-2 year? Had an 0-2 year, lost to Leon Edwards, lost to Hamza Chimaev. Man, Kamaru Usman, another fighter that you could actually throw on UFC 300 if you want to. Currently doesn't have a fight booked. Still the number 1 contender at welterweight. He could fight Shavkat Rakhmonov. He can fight Jared Cannonier. He can fight Robert Whittaker. Who knows what to do with Kamaru Usman. At number 41, we got Yan Chayonin. How about that? Your UFC strawweight number one contender who'll be fighting for the belt at UFC 300. We mentioned that. 17-3 professional record. She knocked out Jessica Andrade last year. Good for her. Happy to see it. Good for you, Yan Chayonin. At number 40, dropping down from 18 last year, Davison Figueiredo, 22-3-1 professional record. Look, I completely get this. He lost to Brandon Moreno. Didn't end up fighting again till the end of the year against Rob Font. Hey, he's got sights set on Sean O'Malley. We'll see what Davison Figueiredo brings us this year. At number 39, here's a name I hear a lot. This guy is in Bellator. Johnny Eblen, who is currently the middleweight champion over there with 14-0 professional record. Sits atop the division. He's undefeated as a pro. Man, impressive stuff. He will face his toughest test to date when he takes on 2023 PFL light heavyweight champion Impa Kansagana on February 24th. Ooh, that should be a good one. But Johnny, you know what? You weren't ranked last year. You're on here at 39, 14-0 middleweight champ. I wish you luck against Impa Kansagana, hope Impa's on here. I really hope they throw Impa Kansagana on here. At 38, wasn't even on here last year, Dustin Poirier, UFC men's lightweight, 29-8 record, taking on Benoit Saint-Denis in the co-main event, 5 rounds. March, when is that? March 9th, UFC 299 in Miami, Florida. Going to be an absolute banger of a card there. Dustin, I don't know how you're going to do against Benoit Saint-Denis. He's an absolute killer. Even Joe Rogan's warning you about him. But Dustin Poirier kind of did not have a good 2023. Got knocked out clean with a head kick by Justin Gaethje. I've never really been a Dustin Poirier fan. I always I enjoy watching him fight, but I never really root for him to win. Dustin, yeah. At 37, dropping down from 14 last year, you got Brandon Moreno. Makes sense to me. He lost the belt to Alexander Pantoja. I will say that was a close fight. Moreno takes on Royval coming up February 24th. That's actually a couple weeks. Actually a month. I think it's exactly like one day under a month. I'll be happy to see him back. I love Brandon Moreno. Big Brandon Moreno fan. Sad to see him dropping, though. At number 36, Vadim Nemkov, who is unranked in last year's MMA Top 50 for 2023. He is 17-2 and is currently the Bellator light heavyweight champion, former UFC fighter, I believe. He is 12-0 in the company, hasn't lost a fight since 2016, and has held the Bellator title since August 2020 with 5 defenses. Wow. How about that? Vadim Nemkov. Good for you. Good for you. At 35, Aljamain Sterling, it kind of makes sense. He lost the bantamweight belt after defending against Cejudo. He'll be back against Calvin Kattar, but, he does turn 35 this year, and we all know about fighters under 155 when they turn 35. They usually don't win. That's a fun fact. 34, you got Patchy Mix. He's your Bellator bantamweight champion. Wasn't ranked last year. One of the better fighters outside the UFC. At 33, Larissa Pacheco, currently your PFL Women's Featherweight Champion. Another woman who would probably do pretty good in the UFC realm. Actually beat Kayla Harrison. She's the only woman to ever beat Kayla Harrison. Very impressive. At 32, here's a familiar name, Halton Almeida, 20-2 UFC heavyweight, was ranked last year. Huge fight against Curtis Blades coming up. He had 2 main event wins in 2023. Halton Almeida is an absolute killer, and it's funny, of his 20 professional wins, he has finished 19 of them. The only man he couldn't finish, and by the way, he's a grappler, is Derek Lewis. I find that stat absolutely hilarious. At number 31, oh my gosh, this guy better climb the freaking rankings at men's bantamweight. He's my pick to end the year in the top 5. I just don't think he's going to get to a title shot this year. Everyone's avoiding him. 16-0, UFC bantamweight. Umar Nurmagomedov, the cousin of Khabib, one of the Dagestani boys. He was only able to get 1 fight in last year, and it was a round 1 knockout. Oh my goodness, I absolutely love Umar Nurmagomedov. He is such a fun fighter, and even though he just grapples guys, he can strike. He's got knockout power. He's like Islam Makhachev. Umar, I'll be happy to see you. Here we go, getting into the top 30. At number 30, Justin Gaethje, currently a UFC lightweight fighter and your BMF champion. 25-4 record for Justin Gaethje. He had an absolutely amazing 2023. Has a fight of the year candidate against Rafael Fiziev, stops his hype train, wins the BMF belt over Dustin Poirier, and now has a massive fight against Max Holloway lined up. Gaethje, you might be in the top 10 come the end of the year. At number 29, they got Corey Sandhagen here. Very interesting. Wasn't ranked on the top 50 for 2023. 17-4 professional record. Did pick up big wins over Rob Font and Marlon Vera. Not in spectacular fashion last year. He was turned into a grappler. He's begging for a title shot. No one really is saying, like, hey, let's give him a title shot. But Corey, you could easily get one. We'll see. This woman you should watch out for. Number 28 on this list. Wasn't ranked here last year. 11-0 UFC strawweight Tatiana Suarez. Returned after a 4-year hiatus and had 2 finishes in the UFC, including one over Jessica Andrade. Tatiana Suarez, she'll be climbing the UFC strawweight rankings. At number 27, they got Francis Ngannou. He was ranked 8th last year, so this is a big 19-spot fall-off, 17-3 MMA record. Currently has a boxing bout lined up against Anthony Joshua. I'm hoping that he gets an MMA fight in. I'm hoping he makes his way back to the UFC. I know Dana does not like admitting he's wrong, so if you could just admit, yeah, maybe you should have paid Ngannou more, that would work out for the best. At number 26, Usman Nurmagomedov. I don't know. He might be another cousin. Maybe he's the brother of Umar. I honestly can't recall. Still one of the best young fighters on the planet at age 25. Nurmagomedov slid in these rankings. He was ranked 23 last year. He is currently the Bellator lightweight champion, 17-0. He tested positive for a banned substance, but the drug substance came from prescribed medicine that Nurmagomedov did not disclose, so it doesn't taint what he's been able to accomplish, but doesn't make him eligible to fight until April. So we'll see what the Usman Nurmagomedov brings. At number 25, oh man, this is the guy who might make me pick against Charles Oliveira. Arman Tsarukyan, number 4 ranked UFC lightweight. 21-3 professional record. Finishes Joaquim Silva, finishes Beneil Dariush, now has a fight against Charles Oliveira at UFC 300. This kid is amazing. And by the way, his 2 losses in the UFC, in his debut against Islam Makhachev, and a close, basically a split decision against Matus Gamrot. So only 2 losses in the UFC, very close. Arman Tsarukyan, I'll see you. 24, who was, oh my gosh, this woman was ranked number 3 last year. She fell to 24, and that is Valentina Shevchenko. I don't know what Valentina should do. She's 35 years old, 23 4-1 record, very impressive, but she lost the belt to Grasso, failed to get it back against Grasso. I'm personally not really hammering for another Grasso fight, because guess what? If she wins, then they're 1-1-1, and we fall back into the Figueiredo and Moreno trap. So I think Valentina should move up to bantamweight. Move up to women's bantamweight because it's wide open. Women's bantamweight is in need of fighters, and do that. But Valentina, she was the number 3 MMA fighter for 2023. Now she's the number 24 for 2024. How about that? Dricus du Plessis was unranked last year, but they made this before his title fight, and now look at him. He's the middleweight champion. His stock is going to rise. He's the number 8 pound-for-pound fighter in the world right now. Dricus du Plessis. Bring it home. He could be main eventing UFC 300. We'll see. Number 22, Jiri Prochaska. As good as he is, 29-4-1 record. We're hoping he can bounce back from that Oxpear fight when he fights Rakic at UFC 300. Wasn't ranked last year. Probably should have been. Should have been last year. He won the belt over Glover Teixeira. But Jiri, happy to see him. At 21, he was actually ranked 21 last year. Very odd. Charles Oliveira only fought once last year. Destroyed Beneil Dariush after being awkwardly taken down by Beneil. Worked his way back up. Hit him with a head kick. Got on top. Battered his brains. Oliveira, 34-9 record. Looking to get back to the belt. Look, I love Charles Oliveira, man. I would dye my hair blonde for Charles Oliveira. Oh, man. We'll see what happens. At 20, this guy was ranked 4 last year. Heading into 2023, Khamzat Chimaev, UFC middleweight now, 13-0. Last year, the talk was he would become double weight champion in welterweight and middleweight. He would be the top guy. He had 1 fight last year, and it was a close fight on short notice against Kamaru Usman. Khamzat needs to do something big, I don't really want to say his stock has fallen, but all he seems to do is call out guys. He doesn't seem to fight. Hamzat, we'll see what happens to you. At number 19, wasn't even ranked in the top 50 last year, Max Holloway. I mean, dude finished Chan Sung Jung last year, beat Darrell Allen over 5 rounds. Huge fight against Justin Gaethje coming up. Max Holloway is campaigning for one last shot at the men's featherweight belt. One last opportunity to prove he's the man. We'll see if he can do it. At number 18, Sean Strickland was currently the middleweight champion as this list was made, but clearly that is not the case anymore. Lost his belt against Dricus Du Plessis. Definitely going to fall off kind of in the rankings. You know, once a champion loses, their stock falls. That's how it happens. We can actually do a loyal to the belt. We should have done loyal to the belt with Sean Strickland. Strickland's got haters. Strickland's got fans. He'll keep it moving. At number 17, wasn't here last year, Merab Dvalishvili, 16-4 record. He's on a 10-fight win streak. Huge fight against Henry Cejudo coming up at UFC 298. Merab still hasn't gotten a title shot. Probably should have 2 fights ago. If he beats Cejudo, it's unanimous. He's getting a bantamweight title shot. Merab, I'm rooting for you. At number 16, I'm very surprised he's this high. Marlon Vera, he was ranked 13th last year. Since defeating Dominic Cruz with a spectacular head kick in August 2022, the Ecuadorian has been on the short list to be the next bantamweight contender for the belt. A loss to Corey Sandhagen in March caused Vera to fall into the rankings, but a victory over Pedro Munoz in September and his history with Sean O'Malley has now earned him a shot at the belt at UFC 299. Marlon, I honestly think a lot of people think he's going to beat Sean O'Malley. I'm not one of those people. I'm not a Marlon Vera hater, but I just do not think he's going to do it. You got to be kidding me. You got to be kidding me, boys and girls. At number 15, they got, remember the name, Belal Muhammad, the most boring fighter in the UFC. Belal, I'm sorry, I'm a professional hater. Had one fight last year. Fought Gilbert Burns, who hurt his arm in round number 1. Gilbert Burns injured himself in round number 1. Belal still couldn't even finish him. Belal didn't do anything, all right? Is he worthy of a title shot? Yes. Do we want to watch him fight for one? No. Belal at 15 is ridiculous. At 14, he was 7 last year. John Jones, look, he won the belt last year. He got injured. He wants to fight. He's not going to rush back, though. John Jones, still one of the best heavyweights. He definitely probably the baddest human on the planet. It's unfortunate he got injured, but hopefully he'll be back before we know it. At number 13, he was 6 last year. Now at 13, Israel Adesanya. Israel Adesanya had kind of probably the craziest 2023. I mean, went from knocking out his age-old rival to shockingly losing in front of his home crowd to a guy he was supposed to finish in round 1, and Sean Strickland. Adesanya still very good. He's got fights coming with Du Plessis and Hamzat. I'll be interested to see what happens to Israel Adesanya. At number 12, Sean O'Malley. He was 16 last year, had one fight last year, won the belt. Big fight with Marlon Vera coming up. Sean O'Malley is as legit as they come. I'm a huge fan of him. I was a fan of him back in 2020 when he was knocking out, what's his freaking face, Eddie Wineland. And who was the other guy? He knocked out, was it Jose Quinones at 248? I think it was. Jose Quinones, March something at 248. At number 11, oh man, he was ranked 29th last year. My favorite welterweight in the UFC, Shavkat Rakhmonov, 18-0, finished Jeff Neal, finished Wonderboy Thompson last year. Ooh, he's from Uzbekistan, a Kazakhstan fighter. Uzbekistan born, Kazakhstan now. Wow, Shavkat is as Eastern Asian as they come, Eastern Asian Russian area. I love Shavkat Rakhmonov so much. Might be my favorite fighter in the whole UFC. He's up there with Armin and Charles Oliveira, Brandon Moreno. I have two of my favorite fighters, but Shavkat, big things to come. He's got fights potentially coming with Usman, fighting for the belt next. I mean, Shavkat is legit. At number 10, he jumped up 9 spots from last year. Ito Pura, 14-0, proved he's legit. And, he only had one fight last year, and it's all he needed to get a title shot. I mean, I cannot wait for February 17th to watch him finish Volkanovski and become the new champion. Ito Pura, I'm rooting for you. At number 9, he was number 2 last year, but after going 1-2 in 2023, Alexander Volkanovski is now here. 26-3 professional record, and 2 of those losses are to Islam Makhachev. We'll see how he does against the Ito Pura, but Volkano seems to be kind of heading towards the end of his tenure. At number 8, I absolutely love this, was not even on anyone's radar last year. Tom frickin' Aspinall, your current UFC interim heavyweight champion. I mean, here's a guy who injures himself in July of 2022 against Curtis Blades, tears something in his knee, comes back next July, almost to the day, and knocks out Marcin Tybura in just over a minute in front of a sold-out London crowd. Comes back in November, knocks out the knockout artist in Sergey Pavlovich, another one of my boys. But I also like Tom Aspinall. I mean, he knocks him out clean with a right hand, little 1-2 combo in round number 1. He's been campaigning for fights with Stipe, campaigning for fights with John Jones. He said, "I'll take on Curtis Blades. I'll fight Alex Pereira. I'll fight Hulk I'll fight Shogun." Tom Aspinall is as legit as they come. And we could be looking at one of the greatest, if not the greatest heavyweight fighter of all time by the time his career is over. Tom Aspinall, excited to see what you bring. At number 7, I absolutely love this one too. Erin Blanchfield, 12-1, current UFC women's flyweight fighter. I believe she ranked like number 3 in the division. Number 2, Erin fights Manon Fiorot in UFC Atlantic City, March 30th. And she's my pick to win the women's flyweight belt this upcoming year. I think she is so good. I think she's so talented. She beat Jessica Andrade and Talia Santos last year. Sent both packing. I mean, Erin Blanchfield, huge fan of yours. And number 6, wasn't even on anyone's radar last year. Alexander Pantoja is now your UFC men's flyweight champion. Has two decision title defenses, but he's so good. I mean, Alexander Pantoja is so good. He'll be fighting Amir Albazi, Brandon Moreno. I mean, he's got Muhammad Mokaev now. He's got a lot of guys on the come up to fight. Pantoja, keep building your resume. All right, getting into the top 5 of the top 50 MMA fighters to watch for in 2024. At number 5, she was ranked 9 last year, so jumping up, Zhang Weili, your current women's UFC strawweight champion. It's a shame. Zhang Weili was only able to fight once last year, destroyed Amanda Lemos. I mean, you don't get performance bonus for a 5-round decision win and not have it be spectacular. Zhang Weili, super amazing. Excited to watch her fight Yan Xiaonan at UFC 300. And her run of late has just been amazing. I mean, knocking out Joanna Jędrzejczyk, submitting Carla Esparza, having a 50-43 scorecard against Amanda Lemos. I mean, Zhang Weili, give it to me. Number 4, we got Alexa Grasso. This is very bold. Well, was not ranked last year, became UFC Women's Flyweight Champion, 16-3-1 professional record. I just think she's the kryptonite. She's the kryptonite to what's her name? Valentina Shevchenko, but I think she loses. To other fighters in the division. I think Manfiora beats her. I think Erin Blanchfield beats her. I would maybe even say like Natalie Silva would beat her. But Alexa Grasso at number 4, very cool. At number 3, he was ranked 12 last year. Your current UFC welterweight champion, Leon Edwards, 22-3 record. Beat Usman, beat Covington, did what he had to do. Big fights against Bilal Muhammad and Shafkar Rakhmonov in his future. Leon Edwards, you're good. The number 2 fighter for the top 50. Alrighty, this is wild. He was 10 last year. He's now up to 2. Poatan Alex Pereira, your current UFC light heavyweight champion, former UFC middleweight champion. And he's got fights with Jamal Hill or Magomed Ankalaev lined up for May. Going to be very cool to see. Maybe he'll even fight Tom Aspinall. We'll see. Alex Pereira, had a very interesting year. Had the exact opposite year of Adesanya. Gets knocked out by Israel in, April. Comes back in July, beats Han Blachowicz, and then comes back in November and wins the belt. The light heavyweight championship over Jerry Prochaska. Alex Pereira, absolutely love you. Crazy to see you at 2. And number 1, he was number 1 last year. He'll be number 1 until he retires. Islam Makhachev. I mean, 25-1 record. Your UFC lightweight champion, beat Volkanovski twice, the second time more impressive than the first. Who knows who Islam's going to fight this summer, but I hope we get to see him twice this year. Islam Makhachev is so freaking good. And how about his striking improving? He was supposed to be just a grappler, and he's out here knocking out Volkanovski with a head kick. Islam, you're amazing. That's all I can say. Islam, you are freaking amazing. I love it, Islam. Islam Makhachev, your number 1 fighter for 2024. Oh my gosh. That's pretty crazy. Islam. Alrighty, we got you know what? Yeah, we're gonna talk about it because we got some fun little segment here that I just decided to create. I decided to create this segment, and it was for the next few episodes. We're gonna be reviewing my experience in watching UFC. My experience in watching UFC. I joined in the end of 2019 to start watching this sport. I've fallen in love with it since. It's been so amazing. So we're going to revisit my tenure and just kind of go down memory lane of all the events that I have watched. So without further ado, let's get right into it as we've just crossed the hour mark. So let's talk about the first fight I ever watched, or the main event I ever watched. So I remember it was a Sunday, or was it a Saturday afternoon, September 2019. I'm downstairs playing Xbox. I go on UFC EA Sports 3, and I see that Khabib Nurmagomedov is fighting this guy named Dustin Poirier. And I'm like, oh my gosh, an American and a Russian. How about that? We had the whole Trump and Putin garbage, so I'm like, oh my gosh, this looks so cool. And here I am. I'm like, oh my gosh, Khabib, that's the guy who beat McGregor. I don't know who this Dustin guy is. So I go on Google. I'm like, oh my gosh, Buffalo Wild Wings. Yeah, they show UFC events. Let's see if this one by my house is. And they were. So we show up. My parents are like, yeah, we'll do this. And it's packed there. It's absolutely loaded. It's the middle of the afternoon since this event was in, I don't know if it was in Saudi Arabia. Actually, it was in Saudi Arabia. How about that? Abu Dhabi, yes, sir. And I remember we come in, we watch Curtis Blades beat Shamil Abdurakhimov, finish him with TKOs. And actually pretty crazy about this card is on the prelims, you had Bilal Muhammad getting a submission victory. You also had Joanne Calderwood getting a win, which would actually propel her to almost a title shot. And also on to kick off the main card, Carlos Ferreira got a win. But Curtis Blades, I watched him finish Shamil, and I'm like, oh my gosh, that guy's good. Islam Makhachev, Davi Ramos, boring grappling fight. Wasn't really paying attention. Co-main event, though, Paul Felder, Edson Barbosa, very, very close. And then I got my first taste of what it's like to watch a UFC pay-per-view main event as I watched Khabib and Dustin, and the Buffalo Wild Wings was going absolutely crazy. People were rooting for Khabib, people were rooting for Dustin. I was rooting for Dustin just because he was American. I didn't know anything about the UFC. He almost submitted Khabib with a guillotine, the first ever UFC fight I officially watched. Because, I watched the Curtis Blades, the Islam, the Paul Felder, just kind of half, but this one I was really paying attention. And I saw him almost submit Khabib, and I was like, oh my gosh, this is so awesome. Everyone was going nuts. Round 3, cinches in the rear naked chokehold. I'm like, no, that can't be it. And that was it. It was absolutely crazy. And I became a fan ever since. Or did I? Because I did not really know how the UFC worked. Because I found out that there are numbered events, which are pay-per-views, and they have fight nights almost every other Saturday, basically, pretty much. So the following weekend, I did not know about Cowboy and Gaethje. All right, I did not know that was a thing. But yes, the next weekend, Justin Gaethje would knock out Cowboy Cerrone in Vancouver, British Columbia. Pretty fancy that enough. Also on that card, Glover Teixeira getting a win. Todd Duffy having an eye poke over Jeff Hughes. You also had Michel Pereira making his debut, Uriah Hall. There was a lot of stuff. On the prelims of that card, you had Augusto Sakai knocking out Marcin Tybura in a minute. How about that? Following that event, the UFC went to Mexico City. Still did not know anything about any of that. That Mexico card actually filled with tons of controversy as Jair Rodriguez had an eye poke 15 seconds against Jeremy Stevens. The fans got pissed. The fight got stopped. We're throwing stuff in the octagon. Absolutely a disaster. On that card, though, Carlos Esparza would actually beat Alexa Grasso. Askar Askarov would have a draw against Brandon Moreno. On the prelims, Sergio Pettis defeating Tyson Nam. Pretty crazy stuff there. Paul Craig getting a submission victory. Still, did not watch that event. Very cool enough, Hermansson and Jared Cannonier, I just learned right now, was in Denmark that year when Jared Cannonier knocked him out in round number 2. Gilbert Burns won on that card. Ian Kudalaba finished Khalil Roundtree on that card. On the prelims, anyone fun? Mark Diakise was on the prelims. Giga Chikadze got a split decision win on the prelims. Still was not watching. Whitaker and Adesanya still was not very conscious of the UFC. I had watched Khabib and such. I kind of watched the results of this where Israel Adesanya knocked out Whitaker. Since then, I've watched pretty much all these cards. I've gone back and looked at them. And this card is super fun. Jorgen De Castro knocking out Justin Tafa in round number 1. Taito Ivasa shockingly losing. Dan Hooker defeating Ali Quinta, but Adesanya and Whitaker, that was one of the few fights I just used to watch that over and over and over again. Joanne Jacek and Michelle Larson at a main event. That's boring. Reyes and Weidman, didn't watch that. Maya and Askren, didn't watch that. Masvidal and Diaz. Oh man, Dana, don't come for me. Don't come for me. But you know what? I may have watched this through a YouTube stream. I'm not gonna lie. You know what? I watched through a YouTube stream, but you know what? I've since watched it officially. Since Jorge Masvidal defeating Nate Diaz for the BMF belt. Pretty interesting. Darren Till actually picked up his last win ever against Kelvin Gastelum on this card. Wonder Boy defeated Vicente Luque. Derek Lewis beat Vladislav Ivanov. Kevin Lee had one of the craziest head kick knockouts of Gregor Giuseppe. Corey Anderson humbled Johnny Walker. Edmund Shabazian, crazy head kick of Brad Tavares. Jairzinho Rosenstruck knocking out Andrei Arlovski in 29 seconds. This was a fun card, but I just remember the main event being stopped too early. Following that, still was not really watching UFC too much. The last time the UFC was in Russia, Zabit versus Calvin Kattar. And actually, Alexander Volkov took on Greg Hardy. That is so random. I actually think Junior Dos Santos was supposed to be the main event against Volkov, but had to pull out of it. Greg Hardy stepped in. Very interesting enough. And instead, Zabit and Calvin Kattar was moved to the main event. And it was only 3 rounds, though. Close fight, though. Zabit won. Other fighters on this card that are notable. Magomed Ankalaev knocked out Dulce Luciambula with a brutal head kick. You also had, not much going on this card now that I look at it. Then Jan Blachowicz fought Jacare Souza. Was still not really paying too much attention. I mean, where did this card went down? This card went down in Sao Paulo, Brazil. Gosh, those back in the UFC used to just go anywhere all the time. Following that, Overeem and Rosenstruck. I've seen that clip so many times of Jairzinho knocking him out. One final punch to end the fight. Absolutely crazy. But then, where I officially became a fan, when I officially started paying attention, unofficially, UFC 245, Usman versus Covington. I was big into politics. Politics was big at the time. It was like, oh, you Trump or you Biden or whatever, you're a Republican, Democrat. And I saw Colby Covington everywhere, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I like this guy. And he's talking all this trash. He's backing it up. So me and my mom, I think my dad was out of town or something. Go to Buffalo Wild Wings, and from, I believe it was Jeff Neal and Mike Perry, the final prelim, to the main event, Kamaru Usman, Colby Covington, watched every single fight, and I've never looked back. This card was actually amazing. On the early prelims, you had Brand Moreno beating Kaikar of France. You had Punelli Soriano getting a win, Chase Hooper getting a win. You had Matt Brown getting a knockout win on the regular prelims. But Jeff Neal destroying Mike Perry in a minute and a half, super entertaining. Then Petr Yan absolutely working Uriah Faber. That was wild. Marlon Moraes defeating Jose Aldo. One of the worst decisions I've ever seen. Jose Aldo clearly won that fight. Terrible. I then had to watch Amanda Nunes grapple Jermaine Durandamy to death for 5 straight rounds. So boring. I then had to watch Volkanovski and Max Holloway's first fight, which is their worst fight, might I add. It was so boring. That is not a rewatchable fight. Close fight. It was super random, though. The scorecards were 48-47, 48-47, and 50-45. So 2 judges watched one fight, and another judge watched a completely different fight. And then we get to the main event. And Kamaru Usman versus Colby Covington. I'm torn because I like their second fight a lot, but this first fight may be my favorite welterweight fight of all time. Absolutely insane. The striking, just the battling. No takedowns in this fight at all. And after watching 2 boring fights, this felt so rewarding. I left that night a huge Kamaru Usman fan, a huge Colby Covington fan. It was absolutely immaculate. How about that word? Immaculate. And then to round out 2019, Frankie Edgar, the Korean Zombie. And I remember I still did not know how UFC Fight Nights worked, and I went on to watch it, and the fight had already happened. The fight had already happened because it went down at like 4 a.m. since the fight was in Busan, South Korea, which is absolutely hilarious. I found that super funny. On that card, actually, on the prelims, these were the prelims. Cyril Gane was on the prelims. Alexander Pantoja was on the prelims. Amanda Lemos was on the prelims. They all got wins. Main card, I mean, Charles Jourdain and Doo Ho Choi. I've heard that is a super popular fight, super entertaining. And then the main event, Chan Sung Jung destroying Frankie Edgar. I watched that fight, I rewatched that fight, and since then I've watched every single fight. Since that fight, I've watched every single event essentially. But that was my 2019 recap. The only events I really caught live or somewhat live was UFC 242. Which I was at Buffalo Wild Wings, UFC 244, which I kind of, watched through the phone, UFC 245, which I watched at Buffalo Wild Wings, and then UFC Fight Night, Edgar versus Korean Zombie, which I just kind of watched on ESPN+. But yeah, throughout this whole year, 2019 was a pretty good year. I've watched a majority of all the fights on here. Cejudo and Dillashaw, of course, kicking off the card. I've watched that so many times. Anderson Silva and Israel Adesanya, UFC 234, one of the more a lot of forgettable pay-per-views this year. Honestly, pay-per-views have gotten so much better. Ngannou knocking out Cain Velasquez, seen that a number of times. I've seen Thiago Santos knocking out Han Blachowicz. UFC 235, where it had back-to-back boring fights with John Jones and Anthony Smith and Tyron Woodley and Kamaru Usman. Derek Lewis and Junior Dos Santos, where it was kind of like a fake out from Derek Lewis before he gave in to a body shot. Jorge Masvidal knocked out Darren Till, absolutely wild. Justin Gaethje knocked out Edson Barbosa. The war between Max Holloway and Dustin Poirier, their second fight. So many crazy good fights this year, absolutely wild. Ally Quinta and Cowboy Donald Cerrone. I mean, Donald Cerrone had a pretty good year this year until Gaethje knocked him out. UFC 237, where Nama Yunus beat Jessica Andrade. That was pretty crazy. The card actually had Alexander Volkanovski and Jared Cannonier not in the main event. Pretty fascinating stuff there. Cejudo being Moraes to become double champion. That was pretty cool. Francis Ngannou. The last time the UFC was in Minnesota, Francis Ngannou knocked out Junior Dos Santos. I actually have the poster for this in my room. Joseph Benavidez got a finish on that card. Damian Maia was on this card. Drew Dober got a knockout punch on this card. This actually wasn't too bad of a card. Alonzo Menfield knocked out Paul Craig. Any other prelim fighters? Maurice Green, no longer in the UFC. Amanda Hebus. Not too many star power, but seeing Francis Ngannou live would have been pretty cool. I was 3 months too late. Leon Edwards fought once this year. Max Holloway fought Frankie Edgar. Colby Covington fought Lawler. Cormier and Miocic 2. I've seen that fight so many times. UFC 241. Nate Diaz and Anthony Pettis. Paulo Castagnolo Romero. One of the most debatable fights I've ever watched. I've watched that fight so many times, and I think one of the other person wins every other time. Such an odd phenomenon. I don't even know what to call that. But yeah, and then UFC 242, where I fell in love. Actually, it was UFC 245, I'd say. Some notable fighters that were actually released or retired that year in 2019. BJ Penn was released. Brandon Moreno was actually released in February, but came back towards the end of the year. That's pretty cool. Cain Velasquez retired in October. Actually, I hope he's doing well. Chris Cyborg was released in August. That's actually pretty crazy. Think about that whole situation with Cyborg. George St. Pierre officially retired in February. He was like just holding on to the belt for the longest time, I think. Any other? John Lineker was released that year. Still in UFC EA Sports games. No idea how. Liz Caramuch was released. Nick Diaz retired in February. Nick Diaz will then come back, and we'll get to him on a future episode. Sergio Pettis signed with Bellator. That's one of the crazier acquisitions. Stefan Struve retired in February. He would actually come back for one last fight, where he would get knocked out by Tai Tuivasa. And yeah, those are probably all the notable things that went down in 2019. It seemed like a pretty good year. 2019 seemed like a pretty good year. A lot of title fights. To round this out, your new champions in 2019 was Henry Cejudo, beat TJ Dillashaw. Or no, actually, that was him defending his belt. Kamaru Usman won the welterweight belt over Tyron Woodley. Israel Adesanya would win the interim belt over Kelvin Gastelum. Dustin Poirier would win the interim belt over Max Holloway. Jessica Andrade's slam finish over Rose Namajunas. That's wild. Valentina Shevchenko's head kick over Jessica Ai. That was pretty crazy. Cejudo finishing Moraes. I mean, so many crazy things all throughout the year. But 2019 in the UFC, pretty fun year. 2020, I mean, as we go through 2020, 2021, 2022, even 2023, I'm going to be reminiscing so much about just where I was for specific parts of cards. So, 2019, good place to end it. I kind of came into it in the final 4 months. So we'll see how a full year of review goes. Hopefully it doesn't wear out me voice too much. But yes, that's all we got for that. So let's end this off with our final thing to talk about here on the podcast. A lot of UFC today. I'm happy I was able to come up with so much UFC stuff despite there not being an event. That's always a rare occurrence. But as we all know, there is a massive game or two. Yes, there are 2 games going down this Sunday. The NFL season winds down as we will find out what 2 teams will compete in the Super Bowl. First game at 2 o'clock, the Chiefs will visit the Ravens, and then at 5:30, the Lions will visit the 49ers. Of course, in my fantasy football league, I will be rooting for Isaiah Pacheco, David Montgomery, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Deebo Samuel, Zay Flowers, George Kittle, Ravens defense. I got a lot of players still left in there. My buddy Dane has Christian McCaffrey and Justin Tucker. Those are the only 2 players he has left. My buddy Landon, he's got Rashee Rice, Gus Edwards, Patrick Mahomes. And my friend Tyler's got Lamar, Jahmyr Gibbs, Brandon Ayuk, Travis Kelce, and Harrison Butker. I'm favoring Tyler to win, honestly. I think I'm currently losing. No, I'm in 3rd right now. Landon's winning. He has 267.6 points. Tyler's in 2nd with 260.91. I'm in 3rd with 224.03, and Dane has 204.56. It'll be interesting to see what happens to that, but for my Family Picks League, I added a couple of fun stipulations for this one. So first off, 5 points for whoever wins, whoever picks the correct winner, 3 points for the closest score, and you also get a bonus point if you get a question correctly. And those questions are who will be leading at halftime for both games, who will have the most passing yards out of all 4 teams, who will have the most rushing yards out of all teams, who will have the most turnovers out of all the teams, and who will have the most penalties out of all 4 teams. So we've got 2 things to break down, but you already know I had to come in with some fun facts. I mean, of course, I had to figure out some fun facts to give everyone for the game. So we kick off with the Chiefs and the Ravens. It's been a big run for the Chiefs here. I mean, coming from the wild card where they beat the Dolphins with ease, 26-7. Last week, of course, close game against the Bills, came down to a missed field goal. How about that? 49ers had a round 1 bye and then had a very close matchup against the Packers, 24-21. Sneaked away with a win. Very interesting. Oh wait, no. What am I talking about? I was already looking at the other number 1 seed. The Ravens, they had a bye and then blew out the Texans, 34-10. There we go. That sounds familiar. This AFC Championship game is the first time ever that there's been a matchup between former MVP QBs under 30 years old. Of course, Mahomes has won the MVP award twice. Lamar has won it once. Pretty incredible. Mahomes, very good against the Ravens. Last 4 games against the Ravens. In 2021, 343 yards, 3 touchdowns. 2020, 385 yards, 5 touchdowns. 2019, 374 yards, 3 touchdowns. And 2018, 377 yards and 2 touchdowns. So I find that pretty immaculate of a stat. Patrick Mahomes knows how to handle this Ravens team, apparently. Mahomes is actually the first QB with 0 sacks or turnovers in 3 straight playoff games, dating back to last year's Super Bowl. Unfortunately for him, the Ravens led the league this year in both sacks and turnovers, so Mahomes might be in for a rude awakening against this Baltimore defense. We'll have to see what happens. There is this thing called the Josh Allen curse, where no team who's beaten the Bills in the playoffs has gone on to win their next game. The 2019 Texans beat them and then lost in the divisional round. The 2020 Chiefs beat them to go to the Super Bowl and then lost the Super Bowl. 2021 Chiefs beat them in the divisional round, then lost in the AFC Championship. And last year, the Bengals lost to them in lost to the, who was it? They beat the Bills in the divisional round and then lost in the AFC Championship game to the Chiefs, actually. So just some food for thought, if you will. If I give my opinion on this matchup, it is so close. I think the NFL really wants the Chiefs to win. The fans want the Ravens to win. It just kind of boils down to what you're going to see. I mean, Chiefs kind of got lucky with the Bills game, Meanwhile, the Ravens handled the Texans accordingly, but I've seen a number of times a team blowing out another team and a team in a close matchup, and then it's just not the same game you see. This is kind of a tough one to predict, if I'm being honest, because a part of me just thinks the Chiefs are going to win. A part of me wants the Ravens to win. So if I am going to give my official prediction, I hope the Ravens win, but I'm picking the Chiefs. I'm picking the Chiefs to win. Final score 33-18. I actually did play this in Madden, and that was the final score. I played this game in Madden a couple of times. Both teams have won. I mean, it is so close. It is so close. And you have your MVP, Lamar. We all know how good Mahomes is. I mean, but just look at historically how Mahomes has done against the Ravens. You know, I do think there's a string of luck this year. And I don't know if the Ravens are too good to be true, but the Chiefs might just be that freaking good. I really hope for the Ravens win. I'll be rooting for them. But on this pick sheet, I'm picking the Chiefs 33-18. And for most passing yards out of all the teams, give me the Chiefs. I think Mahomes throws for the most yards, does it best. Now, leading at halftime, I think the Ravens will be up at halftime. Maybe by a field goal, maybe by a touchdown, and then something clicks in the second half for this Chiefs team. Plus, as we all know, Mahomes had not won a playoff game on the road. He managed to beat the Bills. I don't think he'll have too much trouble in Baltimore. Our second game of the day, the Lions visit the 49ers, and oh man, that's going to be good. Jared Goff and Brock Purdy both ranked top 5 in passing yards and touchdowns this year. Goff was second in passing yards with 4,575. Purdy was fourth with, he was fifth with 4,280. Touchdowns, Goff was fourth with 30 touchdowns. Purdy was third with 31 touchdowns for the regular season. Purdy, he had an interesting game last week, I'll say that for sure. And actually, this is a very interesting stat. Deebo Samuel, when the 49ers do historically better when Deebo is playing, Deebo did go out and was hurt. That was kind of tough. Brock Purdy, 252 yards and a touchdown last week, 23 of 39 completions. Christian McCaffrey, an absolute dog. Christian McCaffrey, that's actually an interesting stat for the rushing game. The Lions were the only team to not allow a running back to rush for 70 yards this season. McCaffrey has now done that 12 times, including last week's divisional round game. So I think if the Lions can stop the run, they might be able to have success, but the backfield of the Lions is just not good. They're just not good. I mean, they allowed Baker to throw for 349 yards. Sure, they picked him off 2 times, but I mean, come on, Lions. Come on. I mean, how many yards did Matthew Stafford get against this Lions team? That's another good point to point out. Another good stat to point out. If I can find this game, if it allows me to click on it, I swear the internet just be so stingy sometimes. Okay, I just do not think we're going to be able to get this game. I'm trying to just click on the game between the Lions and the Rams. There we go. Matthew Stafford threw for 367 yards. So these QBs are torching the backfield. I think the 49ers capitalize on this, probably put up a lot of passing yards. Yeah, actually, honestly, the Brock Purdy might be my favorite to get the most passing yards, but I don't see him as someone throwing for like 400 yards. So it'll come down to kind of who can stop who. We all know how good the Lions are. I mean, they've got amazing rookies. Dave Montgomery's good. Jared Goff good. Amon-Ra St. Brown's good. But man, I don't know. This will be pretty interesting. I'm probably going to go with the 49ers right now, 24-20. But if Deebo is not playing, I'm probably going to change my pick to the Lions. So as of right now, 49ers 24-20, but we'll see. I think this game will be tied at halftime. I'm feeling 13-13. I'm feeling 10-10, 17-17. I think it'll be tied heading into halftime. Rushing yards, I see the Lions rushing a lot in this game. I think the Lions are going to have the most rushing yards out of all 4 teams. I see them just not doing too well in the throwing department. I think the 49ers have an amazing defense overall. But I'm going with the Lions for the most rushing yards. Most penalties, I think the Lions. I think the Lions might even be doing pretty good at times. And the NFL might want the 49ers in. I don't know, Lions-Ravens Super Bowl, I think that's the Super Bowl I want. The Super Bowl I think we're going to get is Chiefs and 49ers. Passing yards for all QBs. It's actually a fun fact. Goff has passed for over 300 yards 5 times all season. Last time he did was Week 18 against Minnesota. Lamar has done it 3 times over 300 yards. Last was Week 18 against the Dolphins. Purdy has done it 5 times over 300 this year. His last was Week 15 against the Seahawks. And Patrick Mahomes has done it 4 times this season, including one of those times he threw for 400, which was in Week 16 against the Raiders. Penalties-wise this season, Ravens had 102 penalties called on them this year. 49ers had 101, Lions 97, and Chiefs 96. So I'll be very interested to see who gets the most penalties called on them. I'm saying Lions, but it's just speculation. Turnovers, Chiefs had 28 all season, Lions 23, Ravens 19, and the 49ers with 18. I think the Ravens have the most turnovers. I see some fumbles. I see some picks. I see some slip-ups from this Ravens team when the game is on the line. So, yeah, we got some, we're going with Chiefs and 49ers. We're rooting for Ravens and Lions, but I'm going to pick with the stats instead of picking with my heart. Now, I won't lie. If I see Debo's out, I'm immediately texting my group chats saying, yo, guys, I'm changing my picks. But we'll see what happens. Honestly, a Lions-Chiefs Super Bowl would be pretty cool. The first game to open up the season, the last game to end it. I really like that storyline. So maybe I'll switch to the Lions. But as for now, we are going to ride with the 49ers. They just seem too good to fail. Honestly, they seem too good to fail. We've seen better teams lose when it all comes down to the end. So yes, those will be fun games going down this weekend. Ladies and gentlemen, that's all I got for this episode. This was a fun one. A lot of UFC talk, a lot of stuff going down. I'm excited for the weekend. Going to be a good time. Good vibes all around. See the family, watch some football, and then back to it next week. A lot of homework this year. A lot of homework. Very, very busy. Trying to figure out some side hustles to do. You know me. I'm always trying to stay active. Alrighty, everyone. I'll catch you guys next week. Monday, we'll be back with my review of the conference games. We'll be going over my UFC 2020 experience. And actually, we're going to have a segment of every UFC champion's chances of becoming a double champion in the UFC. A lot of fun stuff. Everyone stay safe this weekend. Stay blessed. I'll catch you next time on the Surprise Jab Podcast.